So super excited to have Jay Kinder here with us today. Amazing opportunity. Like Jay has been a killer agent, across North America, not just in the U.S., but across North America. We're excited that he's here to share with you, how you can win every listing at your price without ever having to discount. So a killer listing system. Today was all about systems. So we're going to have buyer systems, listing systems. We're going to have marketing, all of that stuff today. And Jay, man, you're about to share with our group out there how to take listings and get what you want. So listen, again, I'm going to say, get your pen and paper ready and take notes here because it's going to be awesome. So thanks, Jay.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, Jared. Appreciate it. So to give you guys a little backstory just on where this is kind of coming from is, been in real estate 23 years, and I was actually number 2 in the world for Coldwell Banker for a number of years before going independent, and then ultimately now joining EXP. But as I was in my own marketplace, and it's funny, I was never actually number 1 in my own market, which still makes me it pisses me off still today, just being real clear about that. But I used to compete against a Remax team that was in the top 10 in the world. So when I was selling 531 homes a year, that was my best year. They were selling 700 plus. And so I had to compete against literally every day. The market that I was in Oklahoma was not that big of a marketplace. So it was them and me. And that was pretty much what I got to compete against. And to make matters even worse, they would always discount when they knew they were competing against me. So they would discount to 4% every time they competed against me. And it drove me crazy. And so over the years of competing against them, I had to really work on the process so that I had an opportunity to win the listing. And so what I'm going to share with you guys today is the process that we refined over the years and continuously I iterated on, and then ultimately, put it into a format where I could teach it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so it starts there's four main steps to the process. And the first step in the process of winning every listing is the seller counseling interview, the intake form, if you will, for what information that you're going to gather from the seller prior to going on the appointment. So that was one of the most important pieces of the puzzle as I learned, all the ways that you can lose a listing as you get on the appointment. There's certain information that you need to have. And so in that seller counseling interview, one of the most important things that you can do, besides just getting them to talk about the property, the things that they like about the property, what they may have invested in to improve the property, things of that nature, the things that they tell you are the things that you're going to be able to use to build rapport and connect and become their best friend, which is the second step in the process when you get face to face. You always have, and just to give you the kind of the steps we're going to go through here, there's really the kind of what I would consider the pre-approach, which is prior to the appointment, your seller intake form, how you set the appointment and that process. And then there's the face-to-face meeting and building rapport with both parties and determining who the decision maker is. And then there's establishing your expertise and authority. So a big part of the process is not having to sell on the listing appointment. And we'll talk about that as we get into that. And then only then do we go into the presentation to meet what their needs are. And so this is going from, instead of trying to go on an appointment, if you feel like you're going on an appointment, you have to sell yourself and sell the reason why they should hire you above someone else. This really is going to flip everything to being positioned as the expert and going in to advise them based upon what their goal is, as opposed to ever having to sell or try to, do your dog and pony show. And that was something that I used to do every time. And I thought that was the way to do it until I learned otherwise. So that's what we're going to be kind of going through real quickly here today. And so in that seller counseling interview, one of the most important questions on the whole form for me is, what do you think the house will sell for? If you don't know what the price that they think the house is worth, which oftentimes is ridiculous, we all know that. But if they don't tell you what the price of the home is, when you start to get into the going through some of the market trends we'll talk about later, you can lose rapport instantly if you don't include the price range that they think the house is worth. So I've been on an appointment when I've done this before, and I end up seeing what I built rapport, and then instantly I lost it, and they don't like me anymore. And so this is important to know. And so here's how you get it. So a lot of people tell me, well, yeah, Jay, but every time I ask that question, they always say, yeah, we were just hoping you could tell us, what you think it's worth, right? Like they don't want to give up that. They don't want to play that card. So real quick, it's called a reframe. Okay. This is a simple thing that Tony Robbins teaches, works like a charm. So if they say, yeah, well, Jay, we were kind of hoping you would tell us what you thought the house was worth. I say, That's fine. But, if you had to guess, what would you say? Right. So I'm just reframing the question. So I asked him, what do you think the house is worth? The reframe is that, well, if you had to guess, what would you say? Well, we don't really know, Jay. We're kind of hoping you could tell us, well, if you had to, pick a number out of the air, what would you say? Right. I can reframe that 2 or 3 times. The tonality is important to make it non-threatening, but I can do that 2 or 3 times. Eventually they're going to be like 445,000, right? They're going to tell you a number. And it's important because we'll get to why it's important later, but that is a number that, and I always had an ISA do this part of the process for 2 reasons. Number one, anybody can do it, but you. If you have to do it and there's not somebody, you don't have a spouse or an assistant or anyone that can do this process, you can do this process. I just was terrible at it. So I would always skip steps and not do all the process the way it should be done, being a D personality. So, but having someone else do the intake form, no different than if you go to the doctor's office, someone else does the intake form, is positioning you. It's positioning you more as the expert, and they can actually be selling you and how great you are on that call as opposed to you doing that, right? So if you do it, there's going to be resistance because you're selling. So another thing that we did is we always go last. Never, ever, ever, ever will I go on an appointment knowing someone's coming in behind you. If you've ever done this before, it's almost impossible to get that listing. Once you walk out, especially if you gave them the price, which I'm going to advise you to never do, never give them the price. And I'll show you exactly how to do that and not feel weird as we go through this. But, you want to go last because you want everyone else to go in. They're going to all give them price. And then the last thing they want to know is from you what price you think it's at. So if you're coming in last, this is what I learned. And until once upon a time, I went up against an agent that worked for Pam and Barry. That was the Remax team that I used to compete against. And he was actually the Chevrolet dealership's sales manager. And he ended up working for Pam and Barry as a listing agent. So I knew the guy from sales, and he's a dang good salesman. So he's really strong sales personality. And he called me one day. I had an appointment at 6:00, and he said, "Hey, Jay, it's Kevin Munchell. I just wanted to call you and let you know you can free up your calendar at 6:00 tonight. I took that listing this morning." And he's laughing, and I'm very pissed off at this. This is offensive to me. You're talking about stealing from me. You're taking money out of my account. He thought it was funny. I did not think it was funny. So I went to work on okay, I've got to find a way to make sure that, and what he did was he offered a 4%. He said, listen, Jay's going to come in. He's going to tell you the same thing and and he's going to do the same thing. And we sell more houses and He's like, listen, if you do it right now, I'll do it for 4%. And that was how he got the listing. And I was like, son of a gun. So this is one of the number one things you could do. Every time you go on a listing appointment and you lose, do an autopsy. Call and find out what the heck happened, because you would be amazed at what you learned during this process. And maybe I'm just morbidly just curious, but I would call to there's not a time that I didn't call them and find out why. I wanted to hear what they had to say. Why did you list with someone else above me? And if I learned that, number one, I learned my competition was discounting, especially when I was coming in last, because that was my strategy. They would always do it. So I lost a couple times that way. I was like, okay, I got to fix that. So what we did was at the end of the seller counseling interview, the last question that I would ask them, or I would have one of my ISAs ask them, is they would say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'd like to ask you a favor of you. One of the things that we've learned over the years is that when other agents learn that Jay's going to be coming out after them, they tend to do anything and everything to get you to sign the agreement. That literally they'll use any sales tactic, any approach they can to close you. They'll even try to offer to do it for 3 or 4% commission, just so you don't hear what Jay has to say. And so what I'd like you to do is just promise me you won't sign anything until you at least hear what Jay has to say when he comes out tomorrow at 6. Do you promise? And that a couple things happen there. There's number one, it's a moral obligation, and people make a promise and you make them say they promise. It's against human nature to go against it. The second thing that was happening there was we're planting little flags in their brain. You can call it NLP if you want to, but sales, sleazy, close, sign the agreement. Those are all sales words that when people hear them, they get turned off. And so by saying that, if that person goes in and does try to close them and does try to use these techniques to try to close them, they don't know why, but they're immediately turned off by that. So, and
you're right.
right?
And then you become right. Like, oh,
Right.
Jay said that was going to happen,
Right.
right?
Yeah. That's exactly what was happening. Right. So so that little strategy is how I went on every appointment. Again, I was going on most days, not every day, but the maximum I would go on is like 5 appointments. So my days were scheduled at one. I think it was 1, 3, 5, and 7. So I had 4 slots, and then every once in a while I would do one earlier or and sometimes later, and not usually later than that. But there are times that I did. I tried not to, but so some days I could go on as many as 5 listing appointments, and it was extremely efficient. I delegated everything else. I was only going face to face. So like I got to go the iterations of number of appointments I got to go on, and then, oh, hey, let me try this and change this up and do this a little bit different. That I could see the results of that a lot faster. And then I would also lose listings a lot more often and frequently than most people. So I got to learn what things like you may never lose a listing because you go last for a month or 2. I would do it in 2 weeks. I'd lose 2, right? So like it got to a point where, I started to iterate on the system so much that I was just learning at a faster pace. So that's where the process came from. I don't know why I felt like I was compelled to tell you all that, but that's what, again, I'm telling you, it's not because I'm not teaching this because I won so many listing appointments. I'm teaching this because of how many times I lost. And so all these little things are ways to make sure you don't lose, right? And so the second and important thing that you don't want to do, and you never want to have to sell. I hate it. I want people to know who I am, know what my accomplishments are, know what my skill set is, and have consumed certain things about me prior to my arrival. And not have to concern or learn that when I'm there, because that's when I'm trying to sell myself. And that's how I used to do it, but it's not the right way. You want people to know everything they need to know ahead of time. And that means you should be sending them something, either a video or a package. We called it a shock and awe box. I probably have one around here somewhere. I don't know. Well, I have one somewhere, but I'm not going to go digging for it. But we had a shock and awe box that was a branded box and had all this materials in it, and testimonials and proof, and all that kind of stuff. And that would get delivered ahead of time. Why would we do that? Because that would do all the selling for me. It did the selling for me. So when I got there, I wasn't trying to sell them on how great I am and how many homes I sold and all my awards or whatever, right? So that's the first part of the process, kind of how the pre-approach to the appointment. And certainly in this, you want to make sure you do all the research and know every sale in the neighborhood, every sale. Don't let one thing get by you, because if at one point they say, hey, yeah, well, what about the Nelson's house down the street? It just sold for $325. And you're like, did it sell for $325? No, I'm not sure about that. Let me look that up. Then now all of a sudden you're not an expert. You're not the expert. But if you say, well, that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because it actually went under contract. They were listed for $325, but it looks like they took $315. And so, your neighbor was probably boasting a little bit, but he didn't tell you the actual sale price he got. It actually sold for $315. So you want to make sure you know every sale. You can't let the seller know anything in that neighborhood that sold that you don't know about. And so make sure you do your homework and do the research. This is why we get paid what we get paid. If you want to earn a $10,000 or $15,000 commission, then you have to be the expert. There's no getting around that. So that's an important piece. So now when we get on the appointment, and this was something I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and then now looking back when I was trying to define the process of what it is that I was actually doing, it was actually pretty purposeful. And I would get to the house, and I would always be reviewing the seller counseling interview and all the information as I'm looking up, getting their names and stuff like that. And as I get to the front door, and I would say, I'd shake their hands, I'd introduce, and I'd say, who wants to give me the grand tour? And instantly, the person that's the decision maker would either take me on the tour, or they would tell the spouse to take me on the tour. And I was identifying the decision maker in that first few seconds there in the property, so that I know at least who's going to be most likely calling the shots later. And so that was a little strategy to do that. The other thing that I would, don't make this mistake. Don't go around the property being like, yeah, we're probably going to need to stage this, or we're probably going to replace that, or we're going to need to. Don't tell them anything. They haven't hired you yet. Okay, we're not working yet. The whole purpose of the walkthrough of the property is to do one thing and one thing only: connect and become their best friend with both parties. If it's a husband and wife, both of them. You can't skip one, because one might be the decision maker. That's usually what happens. I've lost a bunch of times when I just couldn't get a connection with the wife or whichever the spouse was that maybe was standoffish, and they told the other person to go take me through the property. Like, I've got to find a way to get connected to them as well. And so there's a ton of things you can study on building rapport. It's essentially trying to find something that's, that you have some shared interest in, whether it's children and they have children, or it's travel and you've been somewhere they've been and you see pictures on the wall. Or like for me, if like I see a Harley Davidson or a Oklahoma Sooners flag or something that I can talk to them about, I'm going to instantly connect. The fastest way to connect with them is with that information you got on the seller counseling interview. If they say that they put in Italian marble in the kitchen and you walk into the kitchen, and this is amazing. I've seen this happen so many times. You walk into the kitchen and you look down at it and you get down on your hands. He's like, "Is this Italian marble?" They will literally lose their mind about it. They'll be like, "Yeah, absolutely, it is. We had this phone in from Italy." They'll go crazy. And the reason that it's funny, because they don't make the connection that they told you this, or they told my assistant, usually was the person they told. Like, they have no idea that I should even know this information. But that's essentially one of the easiest ways to connect with people. If they replaced a hot water tank, if you ever had a hot water tank explode, I had one explode in my ceiling. It was an ordeal. Hardwood floors were brand new, $50,000 worth of hardwood floors. Like that new hot water tank that I put in was a big deal. It was a tankless water tank after that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but pointing that out, someone pointing that out would resonate with me, because I had this emotional experience around this dang hot water tank. So like, if they say they replaced the hot water tank, is this a new hot water? It doesn't add any value to the property. We know that. But just the fact that you're taking a special interest in something that they had an emotional situation with, any kind of repair that they may have done, is something that you can point out. So these are all ways to connect, to become their best friend. Never, ever, 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 ever skip this. Is when you lose a listing because and this is what happened. I lost 2 listings in 1 week, and they both said the same thing on the autopsy. They said, "Yeah, well, Jay, we just felt more comfortable with the other agent." And I was like, "More comfortable? What do you mean by that? What does that mean? You just didn't like me?" And when it happened the second time, I realized what I was doing. I was rushing the process. I was skipping steps. The illusion of moving faster, I was skipping steps. I was probably late, running behind. And I just didn't take the time to build rapport and like really connect with this one particular seller. And I lost to an agent that I never even heard of. They were definitely someone I shouldn't have lost to. So that was the, you learn things if you do these autopsies. And that was one thing I learned. So the next step, so we're into the next step is crucial. So we want to establish our expertise. Now that you've connected and became their best friends, you can, and I'll be honest with you, you can almost win the listing just by doing that part well. Most of us do. We're not that great at the sales side of it, but we can connect with people really well. And if you can do that, you could be a successful real estate agent.
We only have one opportunity to really make that connection, right? So when we're on that, like, we need to make that important. Like, building that rapport and that connection at that appointment is so key, because I 100% agree that, like, we have that opportunity. And once we do that, the rest, like the sales part, will take care of itself, right?
Right. So, it does. It really is. It may be, it might be 60 to 70%. It wasn't for me, probably. It wasn't probably that much at the time that I could have just won, because I was always competing against this Remax team that was killer. So I had it wasn't quite that easy. At least where I was competing a lot more, I feel like. But definitely half the time I could win just by being able to connect and become their best friend. And so the next part of this, and if you've ever experienced this, where you get down to the point of pricing, and then they want to try to debate with you about the price, or they want to try to tell you they want to list it for more, and they're just not respecting you and your opinion of what we need to do to get the house sold. I despise that moment. I just would rather not work with people that don't see the value in what it is that I'm advising them to do. And so, and if you want them to listen, because here's what will happen. The truth of the matter is this: if you don't have authority, if you don't have credibility and authority with the seller, then they might listen to that agent that told them a ridiculous price and that won't sell. And then the house sits on the market for 6 months, it goes into foreclosure, all because you didn't have a process for making sure that they really, truly respected you and trusted you and listened to you as an authority figure on the topic of the positioning and pricing of the home. So it is important, right? So, and so one of the things I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but maybe I was my ego. But I bought this magazine tear sheet thing from Broker Associate Magazine. It was like $4,500. And I remember laying it. I didn't know what to do with it. It's like they didn't coach you on it, but I laid it down on the listing. Like, we go to the table. So like we build rapport, we're connected, but then I go straight to the kitchen table. We sit down, I start getting my things out, and I lay this thing down on the table, and it's a magazine. I'm on the cover of this little magazine thing, right? And I said, this is, an interview that they did, with me about our team and our system and what we do to sell homes. And it's good bathroom reading material. If you get bored, you can read or whatever. And I literally remember watching this one lady. She looked down at it, and then she looked up at me and looked at me completely different from the rest of the time. I was like, she's actually looking at me different. Like I could tell that she went from whatever young little kid, saying I was young at the time. And then she looked at me with like almost instantly trust. What I know now is that people come to trust, and this is if you study a lot of Dan Kennedy and things about marketing and how to build trust through marketing. One of the things that you'll learn is that people come to trust for the wrong reasons. Like just because Barbara Corcoran endorses an agent doesn't mean that agent is any better than anybody else. But we seem to think that must be the case, and so we come to trust people for the wrong reasons. And once you understand how people come to trust, you can deliberately manufacture trust by your process. And so that's what we would do with this magazine tear sheet. I would downplay it. You don't talk about, look how great I am. You say, listen, it's good bathroom reading material. If you get bored, this just explains our process and our system and how we sell homes and what our process is. And so then the next one, this is one of my favorite nuggets to get. Everybody loves this one. So here, every real estate agent does. Well, this is a writer downer. Okay, if you're writing anything down, taking notes. This is a writer. Money moves to difference, not similarity. Okay, money moves to difference, not similarity. Real estate agents are notorious for doing the same stinking thing. All of us, we go out, we do a CMA. When I was back in the day, we used to have Top Producer, and there was only two versions of the CMA you could print out. It's like one color and then the other color. Right. And so it was the exact same thing. They looked exactly the same. So if you interview three agents, you got three exact CMAs, maybe with one of them with a different color. Right. It was just ridiculous. And so that's if you want to look like sheep, if you want to see, hey, somebody's going to choose based upon who's the cheapest. Right. I'm going to pick the agent I like the best and the one that'll do it for the least amount of money. If you want to be chosen based on discount, then be like everyone else. But if you want to get paid the most amount of money, then be different, right? So difference is money moves to difference, not similarity. So here was the thing that I would do is I'm laying things out on the table and getting my folders out and all this stuff. And I said, it's funny, when I got into real estate, they taught me to do this thing called a CMA. Right. And I do air quotes, CMA. I literally do that. and so I see a CMA, and I said, it's funny because it's the most archaic tool in the tool chest of a real estate agent. In fact, I don't know that there's even any real estate agents that even do it anymore. But let me tell you how this would work. Literally, the agent would go and they would pull up some comparables of homes that sold. Now, we don't know if that home sold because they could have been a hoarder. They could have smelled like cat urine. It could have been a rental property that was impossible to get into. It could have been a divorce. It could have been any number of reasons that house sold at that price in that time frame. And the bottom line is, the reason you guys are having me here today is not for me to determine what your house is worth based upon some old solds that may or may not have anything to do with the price of your home. The reason you're hiring me is to determine how to price and position your home to attract the highest offer in the market today. Isn't that right? And they'll go, yeah, because it makes total sense, right? Like that to them, that makes complete sense. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're all thinking the same thing. But you got to do a CMA. No, you don't. You just don't call it a CMA. Call it something else. Okay, call it a market absorption analysis. That's what I called it. And so our market absorption analysis, which we would do at the very end after they already said yes, I would have sold comparables to look at, but I would never do it in a CMA. I would do it individually, and I would draw and stuff, and I didn't do a CMA. And the key to that is what happens is you're creating doubt. So the other two agents that usually come in before you, they did CMAs, and they're looking, the husband and wife are looking at each other like, oh, that makes a lot of sense what he's saying there, and so whatever that agent may have said, you just created doubt about everything they said. So if they told them a ridiculous price, told them they'd do it for less, now it looks like, okay, man, this is, we had a fossil over here at the house using CMA to try to price our house. And so that positioning, it makes you, without you saying anything bad about the competition, gives you, the bottom line is they are hiring you to price and position the home in the market today. And so that's the key. That's the key to this whole process we'll get to here shortly. And so the establishing your authority piece. So now what we do is, and this is the mistake most people make. They start going into the comps and trying to show people what the house is going to sell for most likely, and don't do that. Just don't do that. Okay, hold off on that. We're going to do that at the very end, not till they say yes to hire you. Okay. So at this point, you take the national scope of the market. Nobody does this. Okay. If you're not paying Keeping Current Matters, they're 20 or 25 or 30 bucks a month that they charge. Keeping Current Matters is the most valuable resource for a real estate agent, period. Okay, Keeping Current Matters. It's an incredible resource for all the things that are going on in the kind of a global look at the real estate market, if you will, interest rates, what's happening, with COVID-19 and how that was different from 2007 to 2018, or 2007 2008, like all this amazing information, all these amazing graphs, and then Steve Harney teaches you how to use that to talk to them about what's going on in the market. The reason that you do this is not because it's so relevant that you have to do it. It's mostly because what you're trying to do is this is you demonstrating your expertise. Okay. No agent does the national scope of the market or the global look at what's going on in the market. But if you do, what happens is people are judging you the whole time, and they're like, all right, this person's pretty daggum smart now. I didn't know that was going on, and that was actually useful. And right, so you're going to pick a handful of slides you like, and you're going to educate them as to what's going on in the global market, and based on their timing and situation, what they're trying to do. Let's go back. Let's back up a step. I missed one important little nugget. So when I would sit down, I would also before I would go into this data and start going into this national scope of the market. I would review their goals and their timeline. One of the most important things you have to have is a deadline for when they want to have the home sold. If you don't have a deadline, then you have to create a deadline. So if they don't give you a deadline, then the deadline's 90 days, because nobody has a home selling system that takes longer than 90 days. And that's not realistic, right? Like if it's going to sell, it should sell in the first 90 days, not 180-day marketing plan. So, so that would be the time frame that you want to sell in. And after I review everything and what their goals are, why they're moving, and understand all that stuff, going back over that's in this seller counseling interview in this intake form, I say, based on everything you guys have shared with me, there's no question I can get you guys moved to Houston so you can be with those grandkids before Thanksgiving. I'd like to show you how, a little bit about what's going on in the market. Are you okay with that? Now, that's a transition statement over into the next phase. And then the last thing I tell them, I say, listen, based upon what you guys have told me, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Are you guys okay with that? And they're going to shake their head. Absolutely. Yeah. We want to tell us what we need here. They don't want you to BS them. Right. So like a lot of
that may not be true, but that is what they'll say.
Right. So there's a good chance that whoever the other agent in was just like, we do this. Yeah. We'll open house every Sunday. We'll do. I mean, they'll say and do anything that you want to hear. That's not who we are. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Are you guys okay with that? You've now taken this into a position of you are in charge of this situation and the conversation, not them. This is you being in charge of telling them what to do. And at the end of this process, you will tell them what to do. It's not like you're not going to ask them, hey, do you want to list it with me? No, at the end of this, you're going to be like, based on what you told me, we need to go ahead and get the marketing started. Let me walk you through what that's going to look like. You're telling them what to do. They are begging to be led if you follow this process. And if you can see, it's a few degrees different than what we're used to, right? Like of selling people, right? So it's a much, much better way to do it. Trust me. So now we're going through the national scope of the market. And then this is really important. I used a product called Market. What's it called? Real Market Reports. I don't know if they do Canada or not. And I don't know how much of this data y'all have, because y'all are like data privacy more data privacy than any place I've ever seen.
Yes,
so,
that is true.
All right. So you got MLS data, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at a range of homes. Remember when I said that we want to make sure we know what the seller's range is? If he thinks it's worth $375 and I know it's not worth a penny more than $350, and I say, well, here's what I pulled up, and I pulled up from $300 to $350, instantly I lose rapport with that guy. Like I'm not going to get it back either, because now they're thinking I don't know what I'm talking about. Right. And because they are thinking it's $375. So you have to include in the range of homes. And this is what I call the 1,000-foot view is we're not going to get into neighborhoods, but we're looking at the average price range that house falls in, and maybe the whole entire market. For me, it was the entire market. Maybe it's the city for you. Maybe it's a zip code for you, whatever. But however you you break that data up, I'm just looking at a broad view. And this is what we would do. Instead of doing getting into all the detail of the numbers, what I say is, listen, In the next 90 days, we look at the data, there's going to be, looks like 10 homes a month are going to sell. So there's going to be 30 homes that sell, and let's say there's 120 homes on the market, and there's going to be 90 homes that don't sell. This is really important. So like we always look at days on market and all this stuff, but it doesn't really tell the truth of what's going on in the market. In 30 days, there will only be, based upon this broad spectrum of this price range that your home falls in, there's only going to be 30 homes sell. There's 120 active listings, not counting the new inventory that's going to come on the market between now and the time your home sells. That's 120 homes. That means 90 people are not going to be sold in the next 90 days, right? So if 90 people aren't going to sell and only 30 will sell, what do we need to do to be one of the 30 that sells and not one of the 90 that don't? That's a really important question. And then shut up. Don't say a word. Wait till they answer, because once you ask that question, they instantly know, damn, we're going to have to paint that fence. We're going to have to do this. We better be priced right. Like they understand now, okay, my big hopes and dreams of, knocking $100,000 home run on this one is, not realistic if we want to be sold in 90 days. So that without you telling them, oh, it's not worth what you thought it's worth, right? We hadn't even got into the comps or any of that kind of stuff. But without you saying anything, you've got them in the right frame of mind for when it's time to talk about price, that, hey, remember, and you can always go back to, hey, remember when I told you there's going to be 90 homes that don't sell and only 30 that will, right? That's why we want to price it here. Now, but you're not doing that yet, okay? Because they haven't hired you yet, okay? So at this point, after we go through that, say, and I'm going to stay excited and enthusiastic the whole time, no matter how bad or good that looks. And if it looks really good, and let's say there's like every house on the market's going to sell in the next 30 days in your price range, I'll say this is where most sellers leave money on the table. It's in markets like this that we're able to be aggressive with our pricing strategy and push the limits of what homes have ever sold for in the neighborhood. That's what we're going to be doing with your home. You're in a really good situation to potentially net more money than you may have even thought. What am I doing? I'm looking at the data. I'm giving them real answers as of what I see is what's going on in the market. And that's what we used to do when I would be on an appointment. If we could push the market up, that's what we do. And so either way, it works for you, right? Either way, it works for you. You just want to get them in the right frame of mind, and you want them to know that you're the keys to that success, to success. And so the next thing we do, again, transition statement from the authority building process going through data to the actual presentation is, based on everything you guys told me, there's no question I can get you guys moved to Houston, and I'd like to show you how we're going to do that. Is that okay? When they say, oh, that's okay, now they've given you permission to give your presentation. And your presentation isn't about you, it's about them. It's about your process for how to sell the home for the most amount of money. And so what we created was a proven, repeatable system that's backed by market research to sell homes for up to 18% more than the methods of traditional real estate agents. I'd like to show you how we do that. And in the home selling process, there's over 115 variables that can be managed or in your control or in my control. And it's how we manage these variables. It's going to determine whether your home attracts a high offer or your home attracts a low offer. Would you like to attract a high offer? Well, yeah, we want to attract a high offer. They always say that, right? So I always ask them, do you want to attract a high offer? Yes, we do want to attract a high offer. So you ask them that question, it engages them, it keeps them involved in the process. And then from there, we go into the process. And there's not enough time on there for me to go through the actual system that we use. But there's basically principles that apply in every situation, and no matter where you're at, and we go through each of those stages, and along the way, I check them in. I say, do you see how this could help you to help your home to sell for an additional 3 to 5% more money? Negotiation is one of them. Do you see how having the right person negotiating on your behalf could help your home to sell and help you to put an additional 3 to 5% in your pocket? They say yes. Every point, every principle, I tell a story, and I tell them what we do this different. And then I tell them, then I ask them the question to check them in, and I check them in 7 times, 7 small yeses. And at the end, the last yes is the yes that they're going to hire you. They don't know that necessarily, but that's what's happening. And so at the last point, the last time that you ask that question, based upon everything I've shared with you, do you feel like this system is the best system to get your home sold for the most amount of money? And they say, yes, they just hired me. Based on then from there, now you're transitioning into, based on that. Now what we need to do is we need to look at what are some things that we may want to invest in, or maybe not, in terms of to attract the highest possible offer. And we're going to talk about all the things that we talked about earlier, like in my presentation: staging, photography, what things we may want to do to get prepared for get prepared for taking photos. And let's look at where we want to price and position the home and enter the marketplace. So let's get together and start that process. And then I start going through some of those comps with them. And together we're discovering and determining where we want to price and position based upon the current market, what's under contract, and what's actually sold. That's your CMA. And we don't call it a CMA, right? So that's that. And then, but again, at that point, it's not asking, you're not asking, begging for a listing. You're telling them what to do next based on what you told me that you're trying to get sold by this date and get moved to here. The next step is we need to start the process, right? And so that's it's a natural flow, and it works very, very well. So hopefully that was valuable. I have no idea how much time that was.
35 minutes. You got it done in 35. We could talk for hours about this, right? Like the reality.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I love it. Like ultimately, I mean, I coach a lot of people in the perspective of what position are you putting yourself in when you're in front of the seller, right? Like what position yourself. Then your job in that presentation is, what story are you getting the seller to tell themselves? Because like in our heads, we're always telling ourselves. So what story are you getting the seller to tell themselves? And then how do you get the seller to self-discover that you're the person and your system and what you have is what they need to do to get their home sold, right? So that's exactly what you've done through that whole process. And that's awesome. Like if you guys didn't take killer notes there and get some stuff out of that, then like, come on, like that's the way. And listen, in today's market, listings are the king, man. Like,
yeah, they are.
Like if you got listings, you're killing it no matter what. Like, I mean,
listings have babies, man. Listings have babies. You know what I'm saying? Like, Mike Reese used to say it all the time. He cracks me up. He's like, listings have babies. And you get a listing and somebody down the street sees you sold that house, they call you and list their house. You get a listing, somebody needs to buy that house, they got a house to sell. You get a listing and it's a divorce, two people got to go buy new houses. Like, you can get multiple transactions off of listings. And if you're investing your money in lead generation on the buy side, if you were getting listings, you wouldn't have to do that. You would be getting buyers because you have listings you could be marketing. And so it's just it is the way to go. I'm not a big fan of the big realtor.com and Zillow and the how much they charge for that crap. You know what I'm saying? Like, you become focus on listings, build your inventory. It helps build your brand. It is absolutely the right strategy to build a successful business, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So you spend time becoming an expert in this. And listen, today we're talking about systems, right? Like, everything has to have a system and a process, and everything you went through there is systematic. It's duplicatable. It's repeatable. It's, all of that, which is you create those systems in every aspect of your business. You're going to kill it. Well, Jay, man, I appreciate your support today and getting out and sharing that with us. We know that you're a busy guy and doing these trainings all over the place. Now, if someone wants to see you, what's your website, or get in touch with you?
So you can go to I tell you what, most people, if you wanted me to train you on this process, we do that. That's part of our business at NAEA, the National Association of Expert Advisors. So if you're interested in that, we have an event that we do where we train you up and train you like a Navy SEAL and send you back home with your presentation, your tool, everything you need. That's the done for you stuff that goes out before the listing. We do everything done for you. So you can go to Kinder Reese. I think it's kinderreese.com. and kinderreese.com or naea.com, and you can look at upcoming events, and you could either come to one of the virtual ones, or you could go take an online course. But get involved, and if we can help you, we would love to help you grow your business, and would love to help you any way we can.
Cool, awesome. But I appreciate your time today, and take care, stay safe, and we'll see you later.
You got it, man. See you, Jared.